The thing that's complicated is that if you're not prepared to say something different, it doesn't break through the algorithm. So you have to have a point of view or perspective, because otherwise, if you're saying nothing, there isn't a spike in interest. And the way that the algorithm works, it's not personal. It's just based on, are people watching your video past the 5-second mark? And if the answer is no, because you're not saying anything, or you're taking too long to preface, or you're waffling, or you're trying to explain both sides, you've lost their attention. That's why strong point of views win.
Camille Moore, welcome to From Vision to Creation. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me today.
I'm very excited, and I'm pumped that we're doing this in person. What are the chances?
I am too. I'm glad that it worked out, because when I thought we were going to have to do it online, I was like, no, I love doing them in person.
And we were down the street from each other. It was kismet.
I love it. Yeah, it's destiny. And then both of our schedules were just open. So let's go. We got this.
Amazing. Let's do it.
Camille, you have built a very strong perspective on branding that goes way beyond content and visuals. You really lean into perspective, positioning, and you talk a lot about world building, which I think is incredible, because a lot of people show up online, but very rarely are able to build something that's truly differentiated and lasting. So I'm super excited to dive into your journey.
Cool.
And then talk about what it truly takes to build a brand that resonates.
Well, that's what's so interesting about the journey, is that when I started in marketing, what's so cool about talking at this point in the 2026 of it all is that it wasn't actually sexy for a very long time. I was working with small business owners and back in Canada, it was lawyers and it was doctors. And I was so proud of that. I thought that was such a big deal that these professionals in our community would trust me with their brand. That to me was wow, I'm really making an impact. And what's interesting is perfecting those brands and seeing those as a challenge and a lifetime achievement to be really good at taking care of these local people. That ended up turning into content. And that's really I think that's the funniest thing is I always get asked when did you make it? I'm did I make it? I'm I think all of these things have been small wins along the way. It's not one, it was never one moment. It's oh my God, Van Cleef reached out. And then 20 lame clients reached out after that. It wasn't it was Van Cleef and then it was this and then it was that. It was small 1% compounding every day. But the reason why I say that is that what's so interesting is world building is just building a world. And that's why there's extreme scales of it. You can look at the Summer Fridays, but they're also owned by Unilever. They've got a different level of capital, but then you can also look at Hot Girl Pickles and Meadow Lane and Sammy Newsdorf. And even when you say about my world that I've built, it's understanding what are the pillars that make a brand and how do you build upon them every day in a way that's intentional, so that you're building something that people can enter into and can get lost at. And that's what I've understood, because in my story, there was a point along the way where when COVID hit, I literally thought I was going to lose everything. And I had a mortgage to pay, and I had employees with children, and I was faced with the world shutting down, and there was nobody that I could ask that had been through it before, because we hadn't had a global pandemic like that since the Spanish flu, which there's, not too many people that went through that. And my point is that when I was going through that, when I read all these case studies and all these journeys, which I think is another question you're asking me, is I realized that kind of success leaves clues. And as long as you can start pulling from those success clues, and I know you'll ask what builds a brand, but as long as you can start doing those wherever you are in your journey, and you understand that it's small incremental compounds every single day, you will too get to the Summer Fridays or the Yetis, right? It's not zero to Summer Friday.
This is one of my favorite things about your content, Camille, is that you really do have such an in-depth understanding about branding and how it works and how to efficiently tell a story. At what point in your life did you realize, hey, I have a really good understanding of this more than the typical person does?
It's funny because recently I almost realized that there was since I was a kid, there was all these moments that led to this suggest destination. I grew up in really humble beginnings. My mom was a letter carrier. She was a single parent mom. My dad was in the picture, but they were divorced. And my dad, had a business that he kind of struggled with. And I never knew that we were poor because we grew up in a really poor area. So we were like the best of the worst. So like, I was like, it's kind of interesting when you're like at the top of the bad, like how different your perspective is. But it was still, bad. And by the time I got to high school and stuff, and I realized, I'm like, shit, we're poor. Like I had no idea. But like now when I'm in a different pool, I didn't want people to know. I was embarrassed. And I got a job at 14 so I could buy brands. And people didn't ask me questions because I had blue eyes and I had blonde hair. And like, as long as like people didn't ask me questions, I could be a version of myself that I wanted to be. And what's crazy is that like now I talk about it so openly. I'm so proud of it because I think struggle is actually what makes people great. But I was so embarrassed that I had this like notch against me because I felt like I was as good as these other kids, that I would be I made myself the closest friends with like the richest kids in Toronto only so that I could study the parents. Like I was like asking the parents questions because I believe in this Tony Robbins quote that success leaves clues. And basically when I was going through this, I ended up dating for a very long time one of the more successful families in the city, and they were so good to me. They showed me luxury branding. They showed me like how they ate, how they dressed, how they talked, and I studied it all. And I studied it all for a decade, so much so that I could pass off this version of me that like was not me.
Wow. So okay, this is really interesting. You were ashamed of where you came from, so you wanted to reinvent yourself.
Totally.
And so by studying this wealthy family that you were a part of for 10 years, that is how you learned to pick apart brands and understand how they work.
A part of it, yeah. So that was my first stage. So when I went off to school, I had to pay for myself to go to university. And I had 3 jobs because I joined a sorority because I'm like, if I'm going to go. So back home, there's only a few great universities. There's like McGill, there's Queen's, and there's Western. U of T is really great too, but it's more of an international like intelligence than like more brand status. So Western's like an ASU. Like it's a party school, but it's also a good school. And I was like, if I'm going to Western and I'm paying for myself to go to Western, I'm going to join a sorority. Not because I wanted to party. I never partied. I literally had 3 jobs. I had no life. But because I wanted to change the people I knew. I wanted to keep like leveling it up. How could I study more successful people? How could I so I got myself an internship when I was in my undergrad at a law firm. And because I was like, if I'm going to go in debt for law school, I better make sure that I want to do this job. So I took that on as an internship. And at the time I was doing a computer science course. And I realized very quickly that I wanted to go to law because I wanted to be successful and I didn't have math and science. So I was like, if I can speak, I can synthesize information, I think that I'll be a great lawyer. And this was like Suits, Legally Blonde. Like there was all these glorifications of it on TV. And again, I come from a non-educated household. So all that I can base it off of is like, we can laugh now and I make Legally Blonde jokes, but like what you can see on TV. And when I went to this law firm, I realized very quickly that most of law is clerical. It's not performative. It's not really analyzing. It's not really asking people things on the stand. So I started rebranding his firm. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was sitting at the front bored out of my fucking mind on Mondays. So I redid his logo. I thought it looked like shit. I started doing these graphics. I started putting them out on Facebook. I started documenting these cases and courses that they were winning because I had to answer this damn phone at the front desk for 8 hours. I'm like, I might as well do something on the side because these injury reports were killing my soul. So the phone started ringing off the hook, blowing up. And I didn't know what I was doing. And the owner sat me down and he's like, don't get into law. He's like, get into marketing. This is blowing up. People weren't marketing on Facebook. This was 12 years ago. And I'm like, oh, can I be rich doing this? He's like, yes. Like, yes, if that's your question, yes. And he helped me incorporate the business and he helped me get some people. And to fast forward your question, I had it naturally because I understood positioning and messaging by studying brands and by changing the way that I wanted to look. On top of that, I went to school for the performing arts because in Canada, I think it's the same in the US, you have to go to school based on your postal code, which is your zip code. And my school was like one of the worst of the worst and like a really bad school. So the school that I wanted to go to was a performing arts school that you had to apply to get into, but it was an hour and a half every day. So back and forth. So it was almost 3 hours to get there. But the reason why I did that in grade 8 is like, I have to get out of the hood. Like I have to go to school where people are becoming successful, where they're performing. So I at 13, I went to my mom, like, I got to go to the performing arts school. She's like, huh? She goes, you're going to travel first to last stop on the public bus. It took purely almost an hour on the bus to get to and then it was 13 stops on the subway. Like it was a huge trip. And my mom's like, are you sure? I'm like, Mom, I gotta get, you know what I said? I gotta get to Hollywood. I gotta become a performer. If I can perform, I can get out of the hood. Like I can get out of here.
Camille, what gave you the drive in grade 8? Because I feel this is blowing my mind because I feel like most people, when you're dealt a difficult hand, especially early on in life, you're inexperienced, you don't have a lot of resources, you really didn't have any role models that were living with you or family members, and yet you understood that you needed to get out to do that.
I gotta get out.
How did that occur to you so young?
I don't know. I just knew, like, there. You know what's actually crazy is the guy. It's so funny. I haven't said this. It's such a funny random story. The guy, this boy in grade 8, I fell in love with him. He was my boyfriend, but we did nothing. It was I said boyfriend in grade 8, but it was nothing. It was embarrassing. He told me this story. And he told me the story about how he played hockey and this guy on his hockey team had an elevator in his house and he had all these Ferraris. And this is so irrelevant to the American audience, but this super famous NHL player's son was on the team. And I remember sitting in grade 8, I was in geography class. It was the period before lunch. And I was just listening. And I'm like, how do I meet people like that? How do I get out of this bubble that is the hood? Like, how do I get, and you know what's crazy? That boy that other boy was telling me about that had the house with the elevator ended up being the guy I dated for 11 years.
Oh my God.
And you know what's crazy? We didn't even figure that out until like 6 years in. I randomly brought up one day, I was like, Aiden was telling me that it was like, I was like, by the way, does X NHL player's son have an elevator in his house? He's like, why are you asking me that? And I'm like, because this guy was telling me in geography class, he goes, Camille, that was my house.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, oh my God, the Ferraris are the Ferraris that are in the garage. So my point to this story is that I don't know where it came from. But as far back as it goes, my mom would be like, we always had to shop at like the thrift store. And I would be hoarding the brands at like 5 and 6. Like I'd be trying to go home with like the Coach bag that made its way to the Value Village in Toronto. My mom's like, you're 6. Like, how the fuck do you know what Coach is? And I'm like, and then I was like, had my purses inside. So my point is that it was like, it was never a moment where I was like, I'm gonna get into marketing. And like for the rest of the story, to speed it up in an effort of not everyone just listening about me and my story, the thing that's crazy cool about it is that once that lawyer kind of said that to me, he did intros to these other business founders along the way. And they were like, they would hire me and then they were all super happy. And then I hired my friends and I'm like, shit, this is great side money. And at every stage along the way, that's what made Nike 2 weeks ago so special is like I got a marketing job and they like a brand in Portland purchased it. And then I flew to Portland and then I was in this agency meeting and I was like, wow, this is so cool. Maybe one day I can do this. Maybe one day I can work for a brand like Nike. Like in my brain though, it would be like a 65-year achievement. Like that's what I can't explain is like, I thought working with like the largest real estate law firm in Ontario was a big ass deal. Like, cause I didn't lose sight of where I came from. I was just so hungry that hopefully one day I can be successful. So like, that's what's so funny about the story is like, there was never a moment where I was like, I'm doing this for X. And it's the best industry I've ever fallen into because I'm obsessed.
One thing that I want to talk to you about that I think is really important for everybody who's listening is that you were mentioning how you felt shame around coming from where you came from because you weren't rich. I think that it's really awesome that you're opening up about that now because I agree with you. It makes the story even cooler.
Yeah.
And so I feel like when you, especially when you're raised under certain circumstances, you feel burdened or maybe like permanently labeled because of how you grew up, but really your upbringing does not determine your circumstances in terms of your career because you can put yourself out there and you can make it work. You are living proof of that.
That's why there's never been a better time in our lives, in the history of humanity, to have lived. That's why I am so bullish on like create a personal brand and start creating content. Like I am a feminist in the sense of like I'm strong and I'm a strong person that happens to be a female, but I come from a long history of no one else being educated in my family. But what a fucking gift that I can create a piece of content on Nike and Nike can call me and hire me to come and teach them on branding. That has never existed in the history. Like when I was saying 10 years ago, I hoped in 50 years to be able to get a brand like Van Cleef would be my dream. Maybe I could get that, is because every effing story that I read, because I read them all. I read all the business case studies. I read all the stories. It took them 40 years to do something. I started the agency 10 years ago, and now we've got the biggest names in the world on a retainer. Not like, sure, I'm good, but I'm not I can't be objectively the best. Like there's a whole world of professionals that have been doing this for a long time.
Well, one thing that you and I were talking about before we started recording is that you feel very confident to make polarizing statements and have an opinion about things. Camille, I'm not sure if cancel culture has anything to do with this or what the deal is, but I think that people are afraid to say things that other people are going to disagree with. And I think that that's what sets you apart, because I've even heard you talk about how you challenged Nike on a lot of their marketing efforts.
Damn straight.
Tell us about that. Like, what did you challenge them on, and what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's great teachable learnings. It's the thing that's complicated is that I want to preface what I'm going to say with the wisdom that it takes time to grow into the person you want to become. And that's really what is the theme. And that's why I try to be so real and raw and authentic about the story. Is like, I think it's the biggest joke of all that Van Cleef wants to hire me and Bulgari's flying me to Rome. I'm like, you got no idea where I grew up. You have no idea. This is amazing. And this is like, I feel like I'm like, it's living proof of like, to me, it's almost like, it's a movie of life can be whatever you make of it. And that's like the way that I want to preface it of like, is the growth that I've experienced. I didn't get this when I was young. I was embarrassed by my age when I started this business. I always wanted to be older, but there's actually something that comes with the wisdom of time. And what I've realized along the way is I've always been a blunt person that will tell you what I'm thinking, but I was definitely not as bullish and bold in a public setting. And that's why I started on TikTok, because the idea of posting shit on Instagram petrified me, because everyone and their mother, when you have no followers, is like, who does she think she is now? And those are real feelings. And we can address that in the next segment, the next portion of this. But the thing that's complicated is that if you're not prepared to say something different, it doesn't break through the algorithm. So you have to have a point of view or perspective, because otherwise, if you're saying nothing, there isn't a spike in interest And the way that the algorithm works, it's not personal. It's just based on, are people watching your video past the 5-second mark? And if the answer is no, because you're not saying anything, or you're taking too long to preface, or you're waffling, or you're trying to explain both sides, you've lost their attention. That's why strong point of views win. The thing that's complicated is I say to be controversial not through the lens of being hateful, because a controversial has more of a hyperbolic connotation tied to the word. But you need to be controversial in the sense that if you're a service provider or if you own a product, you probably have a pretty strong point of view on the industry where there's weak spots and where there's people being misguided. It is your job to problem match for where your customer sits, to give them a point of view for them to pick the best person for the job. And if you're only giving your perspective behind closed doors, you're limiting the number of people that can connect with you, because we now live in a numbers game. Like, when I give talks to big rooms, I ask people, how many of you searched me on Instagram before going to my website? Almost the entire room goes up. That's where people are deciding whether to engage with you. And you have to give a perspective, because if I refer you at lunch, I'm like, oh my God, you got to hire Alexander. He's amazing. He's so ahead of the curve. He's incredible. And then they go on your socials and there's nothing there, or boring videos. There's a higher likelihood that something else will happen and I won't pick up the phone to call you. I will say on another hand that what I've been blown away with, and that's why I was saying like the wisdom of when it takes time, is like the first thing I want you to do is do something that makes you 10% uncomfortable. Because at least if you're getting yourself into the realm of what's uncomfortable but not where Camille lives, is a part of that growth journey. You know, like the thing is, like, people assume they need to go 0 to Bonnie Blue. You know, and it's like, no, you don't need to go like all the way extreme. Like, and if you don't know her, I mean, Google her and you'll laugh at my comment. But my point is that you just have to keep doing incremental steps of doing things that make you uncomfortable. And that might just be showing up and doing a piece of content, but then it becomes comfortable to do content if you're not doing something that adds a point of view. My last piece to that is, I have found I love now when I get angry comments, because as long as my approach was thoughtful and resonant with what I think makes sense in my point of view, most of the time, the people that disagree are not my customer. And like, that's a really, really interesting perspective. If it doesn't matter to please everyone, if they're not your customer. And that's the thing that's amazing with socials. Like, I just did a whole video on, like, this is so random. I did a video on like 818 Tequila, Kendall Jenner's line, collabing with Salt and Stone. Some chick was on there, was like, great video, but I will never support a tequila brand not owned by a Mexican person or a Mexican brand. And I'm like, that is such a small example, but I'm like, who the fuck cares? Like, if that's the negative, like, who cares? Like, I can't break this down because this random woman is telling me what her buying profiles are. Like, that's the most of it, is like, you can get an opinion from anyone and most of them don't matter. And I'll give you one more example before we move on. Such a good effing point. So I did a post on The Bachelorette. It was a hot take. I said, ABC torched $30 million by pulling, what's that chick's name?
Taylor?
Taylor. By pulling Taylor after they recorded, after they already knew the charges, after they would have done all the R&D and all the diligence, and they were expecting this to be controversial, and then it becomes controversial and they pull it. Stupid decision making. There was like, of the 1,000 comments, 100 of them being like, you're a horrible person. How dare you condone domestic violence? Which I said in the post, I'm not condoning domestic violence. Her first show, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, start with the police being called on domestic violence. The charges happened in 2023. It's 2026. So like, all of this shit is common knowledge. You made decisions based on that point. My point is that a lot of people would feel frozen because domestic violence is real, a problem, and very harmful to people. But that post, I had 4 of the leading CEOs, 3 of the biggest venture capitalists privately text me and go, dude, your shit's the best shit on the internet. And all that I have to say is, I give way more fucks about those 7 people that have buying power, that can change the trajectory of the brands I can work with, than the 100 women that are sitting at home scrolling on social media that want to tell me that I'm a bad person for reinforcing that ABC made a wrong decision. And at the end of the day, I sleep fucking great because those women I'm not staying up for. And that would have been a different answer for you 5 years ago because I did care what people think and I did care what they say. But if I continued to care about people's opinions that didn't matter, I wouldn't have been able to achieve what I have achieved. And that's the balance that you have to trade off. But that's a journey you have to go through.
Well, and when you're posting things that are capturing people's attention, it's usually because you are making a strong point. And when you make a strong point, you're going to get people that both agree and disagree. It's just the way it is.
That's what you want.
Yes.
That's what you want.
It's so funny because I used to be afraid of getting hate comments and no one likes it, but I used to think, oh God, if that happens, it's over. And I post shorts of this podcast on TikTok. A few have gone viral. Every single one, with the exception of one that has gone viral, are half of the comments are hate comments, not about me necessarily. It's usually about what one of the guests is saying. But I found that very interesting. I thought, okay, you almost need the hate comments in order for this thing to get pushed by the algorithm.
No, it's what you don't like. That's what people don't understand is that you have to say something controversial in a non-hyperbolic sense.
Yes.
Because the reason it's going viral is it has to be interesting to different perspectives.
Yes, that is the key word right there, Camille, because if you are just being hyperbolically rude or...
No, if you're being racist or sexist or hateful, that's not cool.
No one likes that.
I'll give you a really great example of when I had the highest level of anxiety ever. So we did a piece of content right during the Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light situation. And Philip really wanted to push for us to talk about it. And I'm like, trans shit, no way. No way. Like, we are not, I'm not here for this. I'm not prepared to have a constructive conversation. He's like, let's do it. So my point in that was I was really disappointed with Bud Light and the CMO's decision because they chose an off-brand personality that resulted in a hyper negative conversation that was unnecessary. Like the Bud Light customer base is going to be mean, and it created unnecessarily negative dialogue because it was an off-brand situation. It's like, don't expect people that isn't their narrative and dialogue and they're not educated on that to have a perspective that they're not at yet, was basically my point. It's like you chose to create something that was high, like if you were betting, high likelihood of not being a positive outcome. And that was my argument on it. And even still posting it, I was like, no way, I can't do this. I'm not going to do this. I'm not ready for this. And honestly, there was 3 or 4 people. I did one time in the video, I mislabeled. And because I mislabeled one time, there was these women that wanted to come for me because of the one time in the video. And I did, like, if there was 12 times, I did 11 of them correctly. But what's interesting is that would be enough that people would like tear it down and be like, I'm done. This is over. I'm being canceled. I had probably, I'm not joking, 20 plus trans individuals reach out to me or parents of trans individuals and be like, this is the most thoughtful dialogue on this topic that I have seen. Because you're not, like, the way that I was talking about it wasn't about whether it's right, whether it's wrong. It's like, it was having an insightful dialogue on something that was in the news. And my point to you is, people are hungry for good conversation. They're hungry to think. And there's also a lot of people on the internet that just want to tell you you're wrong because you're touching on things that are hot topics. It's up to you to decide how far you want to go into those. But my lesson of what I learned in that is, as long as I'm addressing things that are sticky with a thoughtfulness and the openness to have a conversation and dialogue on it, most people are hungry for that.
Mm-hmm. You're developing a point of view,
yeah,
and you're being vocal about that point of view, which is what people don't really do online, which is why I think they're hungry for these kinds of conversations.
Yeah. But also think about, you're in a brand position and you want to work with trans talent. There should be some level of dialogue on the internet that's allowing for you to determine whether or not, like that's what's missing. Is like, everything is just in camps. Mm-hmm. Nothing is like, let's talk. And branding isn't personal. It's like, how are we maintaining the zeitgeist? How are we keeping culture? How are we selling relevant? Also, to sell an effing product. the end of the day.
And Camille, take us back to you pushing back on Nike's marketing tactics.
Yeah. Well, I think that's like the kind of the thing of really what the real through line here is. Like I've had confidence. So my gift is I am a confident person, and I've been confident my entire life. I've been so sure of every decision that I make, but I also do the work, which I think is irrelevant, two pieces here. So Nike, it was kind of crazy because they reached out for us to teach them on world building. Their entire retail, the entire world of retail flew into Beaverton headquarters. So like China and Korea and Dubai, like the whole retail fleet. And it was funny in prepping for it, they made me do several rounds because I wasn't being hard enough on them. And that's what's actually kind of the coolest thing is that these brands, like when I criticized Kim on her masterclass, she followed me that day. When I'm tough on Nike, they fly us there. When I'm tough on Alo, they want to be friends with us. None of them are trying to buy us. And I think that's the most interesting thing is like no one is showing up and asking for like us to stop talking about them or trying to hire us so that they can get us on an NDA. All of these brands are so hungry for constructive feedback to improve because it's kind of funny. The bigger you are, the more lost you get. Like actually, I find small brands have it more figured out, like especially ones that are more founder led than these big brands, but we get overwhelmed by like the size of them. So I would say like it was really interesting feedback that the people in the room that were so excited to meet me is kind of who've been the hardest. Actually, we were at Sephora last weekend and Starbucks CMO came over and she's like, oh my God, I am blah, blah, blah. I am the CMO of Starbucks. And I'm like, shit, we're the hardest on you. Like, we're like, views are down. We go after Starbucks. No, I'm like, but my point is that like, but it is to your point. It's like, as long as it's constructive, they're such hungry, thoughtful people that are looking. And that was also the thing that was cool too with meeting Sephora is I was like I hammered them. Like, well, it's gone to the kids. Like, what's the plan here, guys? Like, and they're like, and they're all women. They're all moms. Like the entire executive Sephora team is like all moms. And they're like, we didn't plan for this. We're not marketing for kids. It's that all of these kids stores have closed down. Claire's is bankrupt. Justice, Limited 2, they're all gone. And they're like, and there's nothing filling the gap. And like kids always want to be like teens and teens want to be like adults. And that's where this makeup is coming into the picture. So it's like, I love it. I guess to answer your question is like, they really wanted me to hammer them. And it was kind of a little bit intimidating going into it because they're like, so we know your 3 levels. They really knew my IP. They're like, so you do 3 levels of brand. You talk about brand death by 1,000 cuts. And I'm like, fuck guys. Like you guys are literally who I use when we talk about great brand status because Nike and McDonald's are like the only brands in the whole world that you can go to a random ass village in Vietnam and just be like, Nike, like that's literally ubiquitous, but they wanted me to be tough and it was great.
Once you become really large, like a Nike or a McDonald's, I think that people almost become, well, in addition to all of the logistical nightmares required to make a decision, aside, I think that there are a lot of yes people around. So having somebody with perspective is valuable because they can't find that in their organizations.
The thing that AI can't replace is taste.
Mm-hmm.
And these big brands, they're so lost in the sauce. Like they need someone with taste that can try the spice. You know, like that's what they're so hungry for. And it's why giving your point of view and perspective is so important because AI is coming at such a fast rate. AI avatars are going to be huge. It's going to become so saturated. Mm-hmm. And I want you to be creating content, like be a competitor to me online because I don't believe in scarcity. I believe in abundance. Like there's a perspective that Nike's looking for that's not mine, you know? And that's the thing that's awesome is that I'm authentically me. Mm-hmm. When I show up online, it's the same as when you meet me in person. If you stop me on the street, and that's not for everybody. I swear I'm rough around the edges. I'm a little distracted sometimes. And like, But hey, if you want me, you can have me. But if you want Alexander, he's great too. And like, that's the thing that's so cool about the digital sphere is that it'll like I am interviewing for jobs while I'm sitting here being present with you because my content is contenting. You know, it's connecting with people. It's posting, it's rolling, it's being sent to internal teams. They're ripping apart. People think I'm an idiot. That's okay because I'm one person. And like for anyone that thinks I'm an idiot, there's 20 others that think I'm great. And that's why it's like, stop worrying about the fear of it. I actually think it's like, you need to be you at full volume. Like you really need to develop a character of yourself. And I'm now like fully living an extreme Camille. But it's great because I'm no longer needing to change who I am for a referral.
Right.
But what's great about that is the people that come in, they've gone to know me over hundreds of hours of content. They want me. We're not bidding it for the job against each other. Like they want you or they want me. So it's different.
Let's say somebody has a great idea, but in order to make this successful, they need to develop a point of view. Because I think, to your point, in today's day and age, you absolutely have to. If not, your stuff doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of gets drowned out. What advice would you give to somebody who has a good idea, who wants to develop a point of view, but they're not quite sure where to start?
You have to do the work. I think that's like, it's actually what young people miss is that they think that they can earn a perspective without doing the work that requires a point of view. And that's like a big part of my story is that when COVID hit and I was like, we ain't failing. There's actually a quote on the wall at Nike and it's like, you may beat me, but I'm going to make you bleed for it. And I'm like, that was so my mentality during those COVID years. What's cool is the townhouse that I bought across the street was Ogilvy. And I was so stressed during those 2 years of COVID. I mean, there was much longer than 2 years, but the first 2 years of COVID when like literally nothing was happening because Canada was so shut down. Every morning when I woke up and I'd come downstairs, I would look at Ogilvy across the street. And I'm like, one day, at some point, I want to be like David Ogilvy. Like I want to be the next generation of what that represents. And I did the work. I read literally 4 books a day. Like I was, a day, fucking a week. That was a lie. I read 4 books a week. I read 4 books a week and whether it was, I had physical form and then I was doing audiobooks and I made sure I was like, I'm not going to be the smartest in the room, but I better make sure I'm the most well-read. So the reason why I've got such a clear perspective and point of view is like, I've read over 500 books and I went to school for English. And so when you look at my Goodreads where we link everything, that's what made a great point of view. And that's what people miss is that people see what I've built and they're like, I can do that. And I'm like, you can do that, but you have to do the work. Right. And that's like a big part of it is like, I did the work.
One time I was at an art gallery with a friend of mine and it was a modern art gallery and there were these huge white canvases that just had like a swirl of paint on them and they were for sale between, $10,000 and $50,000 because the $50,000 ones had 3 swirls or whatever it was. And a friend of mine said, that's ridiculous. I could do that. This artist is doing that. I could just do that. And I said, yeah, but the difference is she's doing it.
Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying. You can't just inherit a perspective or a point of view or even a good idea for that matter. I think you do have to work for it because even a good idea is worthless without action behind it.
100%. You have to execute. Mm-hmm. And that's like what people miss is they're like, I want to create content. I'm like, okay, well, what are you going to say? Like, what's going to be interesting? What's going to be different? And I think that that's the thing is like this idea of social, like that's the other thing too is there was a long time where we were creating content on socials and it was making money, but it isn't as glamorous as people make it seem. Like the first viral video, we got maybe 2 or 3 clients, like every year since has become more successful. And then we really hit our stride. And then we had that tipping point and there was obviously much faster growth. And you guys are also seeing a lagging indicator, right? Like all the opportunities that you see now, like people are like, you've come out of nowhere. You've exploded overnight. I'm like, that's fucking nice because I've been doing this for 10 years, like,
yes.
And that's the thing too, is like you really, I a part of me was so mad and I wanted to rush through it. And there was a wisdom that came along the way that I'm like, this is actually the point. The point is to have tough clients. The point is to learn and to grow. The point is to have a failed campaign and to have to like eat crow. And, that's the point, because that's what gives you wisdom. And don't rush that part because you want to be an internet star. Like you need to kind of do those reps to get there. Because by the time I made content, I was running a business with employees for 5 years before I even started to create content.
That's really interesting. And I think for me specifically, I think that is something that I needed to hear now, because I think that when you are dealing with difficult clients or a campaign doesn't go your way, in anything, like in any business, when things don't go your way or things get tough, immediately you start to think, am I doing the right thing? Am I going down the right path? Is this right for me? When you're absolutely right. That's the point. That's when you arrive at an issue that feels impossible and you have to dig in to overcome it. That is where the growth happens. And that's what makes you amazing at what you do.
Yes. It also makes you a better communicator. Like what I say to my team all the time is like, we learn from the tough clients. Thank them. Because you don't learn from the good clients. You don't learn from the easy clients. You don't learn from the clients that just say thank you and you do whatever you want and you're not actually they don't push you. Like I learned the most from the clients that demanded the most, that were the toughest to work with, that were assholes on contract terms, that didn't pay their bills because I didn't follow up on getting it signed when I had to go to small claims court. Like that's the shit you learn from. And if you really want to be the best, you got to go through as many of those learning iterations as possible. That's why it makes me laugh when people are like, oh yeah, I've never had an issue of a client not paying a bill. And I'm like, I love that for you, but you live in a bubble, my friend. And like, until you you get more of those, call it more negative or harder opportunities, it's what allows me now to have better relationships with clients moving forward. I start conversations and me saying, look, today's strategy is going to be focused on X because you're not actually ready to hear Y. And it changes everything that I do. And it gives me better enjoyment in the job because I have my stripes. I've done those rodeos. You learn from those tough bulls.
And Camille, you are the internet's favorite branding expert. What makes a good brand?
What makes a good brand is focusing on the art more than the outcome. And people really want to obsess about measuring the success of a brand. You really need to let go of that because branding is not a destination, it's a journey. And that's what is actually so cool with being able to work with these brands like Bulgari and Nike, is that when I show up to these places, they're asking me like, how do we keep the brand going for another 50 years? Like even at Nike's, they're like, how do we keep going more? Like, how do we keep going deeper? And that's what the people want the box to check. And branding is a living, breathing art form. Once it's been done once, it can't quite be done again the same way. You need to know what bricks to build and what you're kind of building towards so that it makes sense. And you got to make sure it's on brand. But at its core, a brand is a symphony. It's a song that's made up of a bunch of different parts in isolation that work together to make something that feels right, that stays with you. Maybe it gets stuck in your head. A brand is everything, but it's also nothing.
That's a great analogy. I never looked at it that way.
Yeah, branding is deep. And I think that's why when we go back to the story, like branding is psychology, it's manipulation, it's positioning, it's how to why are you cool if you use Rhode lip gloss, but not cool if you use Elf lip gloss? Like why? And it's all in the master strokes of the brand. And that's why it really is an art form. Is everyone is saying Alex Earl, it's another celebrity beauty brand. I'm like, it's really not. She's a content creator. She understands attention. She understands this is not Scarlett Johansson's The Outset. This is not the same monster. And you need to understand those differences. And you need to I think I was really actually quite hard on the Alex Earl launch. I actually had a lot of beauty founders send me their videos that I'm friends with and hope that I would share it because Alex Earl's ingredient list wasn't good enough. And I'm like, y'all are so focused to tear down someone that's built a highly engaged, tapped in, purchasable audience. Like they buy so much from her. And instead of studying what she did right, you are ripping her apart for what she did wrong. And I understand you acne brands, or you're like, oh, she put oil in this product, we must therefore reprimand her. But those are the same people that are like, my product is so much better, why am I not winning? And it's like, it's really more like studying those clues.
Do you think that that is a scarcity versus abundance mindset though?
100%. I think at the core, the people that are the best at what they do are the worst at marketing themselves. And it just becomes easier for you to be like, I'm going to criticize this person opposed to studying why I'm losing. So yeah, totally. I also think it's that great branding is so easy to consume. Like great content is so easy to consume. And because the human mind likes things that are great, we don't study enough. So it's just like what everyone is doing is so easy and it's so annoying, opposed to like, how the hell does this random chick that came out of nowhere have 5 million followers and is one of the most influential people of our time right now? What did she do? Like, those aren't the questions. It's just like another celebrity beauty brand.
If you were going to reverse engineer Alex Earle's marketing strategy, just by looking at what she has going on online.
Yeah.
If you wanted to understand her roadmap and why she is successful today,
oh yeah,
how would you start looking into what she did?
Well, she's really the master class, not for real actives, but her as a person of kind of building in public, right? She was vulnerable. She was raw. She was real. She gave young girls a storyline that they couldn't get access to on the internet, right? She showed up hungover. She talked about the guy she hooked up with last night, like her ragrats. She broke down her acne journey. Like she really broke the kind of this fourth wall in creating that parasocial relationship. And that's why her launch was so smart, is she didn't do the Sammy Newsdorf of building in public. She did really this anticipation marketing approach that drove a lot of interest in what was she doing, because unlike Sammy, she had the audience and she needed to get them primed to buy, versus, which in essence, those words are the same for both, but Sammy needed the audience to buy. Alex built it and then needed to bring them in as like interest based. So like it's similar strategies, obviously slightly different, but what's interesting is Alex was documenting all of this stuff and put it out on her own timeline. So the way that I would synthesize it is, and that's like the biggest thing, because I actually have an episode with Sammy Newsdorf coming out from Meadow Lane, which I highly recommend people listening to, is we get so obsessed with things being perfect, and perfect is the enemy of getting anything done. And shit, if you saw even with me going to school for like literally the performing arts, triple threat, singing, dancing, acting, training, the first videos, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not the same. It's not the same reading lines on stage as it is to like show up as yourself and provide expertise to the camera. It's not the same. And you know what's also not the same? I've had effing news anchors, 25-year news anchors from Good Morning America, hire me and be like, we don't know how to create content. It's so different. Us reading a teleprompter to a camera with like a limited studio audience versus me creating an iPhone and seeing in real time that 50,000 people are watching it and commenting back to me is very different than a highly produced studio audience where you don't get feedback on Good Morning America at 8 a.m. Like you don't know if they liked it or they disagreed with you. There's no comment wall. Mm-hmm. And so my point is like, even the top struggles with this. So just realize it sucks and get the fuck over it.
And is there a popular branding strategy or method that you think the big brands are getting wrong?
I think building in public and just being vulnerable and real is the biggest thing. And I think it's like where they can't win. You know, even when I was talking to Nike, I'm like, you guys need to create like your own internal SEAL team of like any concept you do. How do you do this as if you were a small brand? Like that's like the problem, is that Hot Girl Pickles are crushing it because people want simple. They want the like imperfect iPhone videos, like documenting, showing people showing up. They want to see you mess up. They want to see the mistakes. They want to see like, they just want humanness because digital is no longer novel, right? Gen Zs have lived their entire lives with iPads and cell phones. Like I think we're kind of, I think I'm a little bit older than you. I got a phone in grade 5, but it was a Fireflies. It had 2 buttons, call mom, call dad, call the police. We didn't get like in grade 8, it was the Razors, which, oh my God, if you hit Safari, you'd be like dead.
Oh yeah.
I got a BlackBerry in grade 10 and we got Instagram in like grade 9, 10, 11. So like my childhood wasn't with social media. And I think we're kind of the last.
We have to be the same age because
I'm 30.
I'm 32.
Okay. Yeah. So we're the same age. So you look great.
So
I thought
do
for
you.
sure I was older than you.
I thought you were gonna say you were like 25.
Oh, I'm so here for that. Love that for me.
I swear.
Love that for me. But that, like, so we're kind of the last, like people younger than us grew up with tablets and phones, right? Like they were like that generation is different. So like human connection is like more attractive to them than over polished, posed celebrity holding your product.
This is interesting, Camille, because I feel that in a way, AI is allowing us to be more human in that we can have AI automate tasks that can easily be automated. So we're not having to manually go through every single cell and categorize our expenses anymore and things like that. So in a way, it allows us to be more human. But in another way, especially when it comes to content creation, it is robbing us of our humanity a little bit. Where do you think it's going to go? Because I also agree that people want real connection. Like, I don't know about you, and maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to go for it. I can't see myself like developing a relationship and praising and respecting an AI character, like something that's not real.
I think what's complicated is like the vastness of society, right? Like, there are Indian AI accounts that are generating millions of dollars. And like, if you go on like my mom's feed, who's like not educated, like a lot of her content on her Facebook is AI. So it's hard to speak in like sweeping statements because like a lot of people's feeds are AI dominant. Now, I do think that AIs, there's going to be like deities and like cults that like think there's like AI gods, because I think for where AI is going, especially like that's like a different conversation with maybe some wine. But the thing that's complicated is that it's going to become like not like unrecognizable. Like that's the issue for why you have to get ahead is like Zara already has like AI clones of models and like they're producing and putting out creatives. So the thing that's going to be complicated is that as the visual component gets better, AI can synthesize my thousands of hours of content that's online for 5 years of posting 2 to 3 times a day. And they can reiterate, spin, predict my thinking patterns of like, and they can create accounts. I've had fake accounts of me. So it's complicated to answer your question because the form in which we'll take over is one we don't know of right now. And that's why humanness and world building is such a hot topic, is that digital has become untrustworthy. In real life, experiences is really where people can connect with brands. And I talk about this, like since being in LA, we have a Tesla. We went to the Tesla diner, super cool. We took tons of photos and videos because Tesla built this whole like 2-story diner experience. They have the Optimus robots. They have like drive-ins. They have movies playing. They have like Tesla themed food. The like Cybertruck burger box comes out. They deliver it to you. And like that I posted on social media. That same day, Nike asked me to go to its store in the Grove. And like I didn't post any of it on my stories. So like that's why world building is so powerful, is like you want to create these in-person experiences that translate digitally. But the thing that's complicated to what you're saying is like, I do think that there's going to be these AI experts that you're not going to know if they're AI. Like, how would you know I was real? other than you see me speak to crowds of people and like me being here in real life. Like if all my content was just shot in that podcast studio, you wouldn't really know.
And it makes me wonder too how much of what's on my feed
Is
is AI
AI.
that I'm just not even realizing at this point, because it has gotten good, like
Really
really
good.
good. And it's a baby.
The thing that's crazy though is a lot of the stuff though that's AI it's for sure on our feeds, but it's more these like weird like skit videos or like it's hard to explain unless you see some like if you go to your grandma's Facebook, like that's going to be a lot of AI. It's people in less specialized industries. Like I'm not making derogatory statements. It's just like if you're not hyper focused on consuming like legal content or like marketing content and you're just kind of like taking more of like social slop, a lot of it's AI now because like they can just produce at such a high rate and test and it's monetizable. So that's why I brought up that Indian company. It's a random name. I need to remember it for the interview, but they're doing like millions of dollars in commissions because their content is monetizable and like people like they know it's AI, but like people aren't consuming it like it's AI.
And Camille, what advice would you give to somebody who feels that they were born into a difficult situation, but that have high aspirations for their life and aren't really sure how to get started moving in the direction that they want to head in?
You have to change your state. Like no one is going to help you get out of something if you're not getting yourself out of it. And you can make any reason, you know, whatever. You can say, you know, I'm blonde, I've got blue eyes, like whatever. At the end of the day, nothing has really been handed. It's just I've shown up and I've earned myself a seat at the table. Like I changed my mindset. And that's why I think it's such a beautiful time. We've never been as a world more accepting of difference, of whatever it is, whatever you want to throw at me. And the thing that's amazing is you no longer have to work for everyone. Work for who's your tribe. And that's what makes creating content so beautiful is that the kind of content I create, it attracts people that think like me. And that's the thing that's hilarious. It's like the feedback that I get on content is like, I agree with everything you say. You like your perspective is the same as my perspective. And it's people like being validated that the way that they're thinking is correct. So it's not even about who I am. It's like I reinforce their values, like their beliefs. So you have to change your state. And I think that's like, I really want to say this, like, I think scary times are upon us with where AI is going. We are so fortunate to be the most lucky human beings in the history of human society to be able to live in a world where we're interconnected through the internet. You can literally start and create a business through your fucking cell phone. Like, I am the first person to have ever lived in my history that I can create a piece of content in Canada and it reach someone in Japan and I can be on a flight paid to work for them in a week. And that's how crazy this is. We create content. I did a post this week on Barbara Sturm. She was like the 100th like on the post. She saw the post and liked it. Like, we live in that world. That's what sci-fi movies were made off of. Stop making excuses and enjoy this gap in time because who knows where we go with AI? Like, we don't know. And you have a window of opportunity right now that trillions of humans died for. Make use of it.
And Camille, what is the biggest life lesson you've learned so far?
Bet big and be right. Like you have probably 2 to 3 asymmetric opportunities in your life that can completely change the trajectory. Lean into them, know when to leverage them, and bet big.
Love it. And where's the best place for people to keep up with you, everything you're doing, and work with you?
Well, my agency is Third Eye Insights. Team's amazing. If you want to do a one-on-one, I got an intro. The best news is that there's not many Camille Moores in the world. So if you search Camille Moore, you're pretty good to find me on literally every platform. I just don't tweet. So don't follow me there.
Well, I'm going to include all of the links to your social media profiles
Great.
and your website in the episode notes. So anyone who wants to check Camille out, click below, and I highly recommend that you do. And if you could go back in time and offer your younger self one bit of advice, maybe back to the young girl who is dissatisfied with her upbringing, what would you say?
I love that I was poor. I don't know if I would change anything about that perspective, because I love that I didn't know. I love that I had a simple childhood and I wasn't encumbered by the complications of all the kids that I really looked up to ended up, not having it as sorted out as I did in the end. But the thing I would tell my younger self, I put so much pressure. I mean, the thing that's complicated to answer that question truthfully is I'm glad that I was stressed out, because it put pressure on me. And what I didn't realize, what I'd probably tell myself, is that it takes 10 years. I think that was what I was the most naive on. And I think that is what I would tell people, is like, anything that you want to do that's like notable, it takes 10 years. And it's funny, someone said this to me recently. I forget, he was someone big. I think it was like the guy that started Theragun. He's like, every overnight success was 10 years in the making. And so it's kind of funny, because I think what I'm the most proud about is the path and the journey, because when people are, what impresses people most is what was what was in my eyes, the struggle. Like when I was struggling, when I was embarrassed showing up to, the thing that's so cool about me talking about this too, is there's thousands of people along the way that I met in all these different scenarios that had no idea who was really next to them. And I love blowing that open now, because it's so empowering to just be like, this is me. And like, I'm not pretending anymore. And like, that's the best part, is it's so, I don't know, I wouldn't change it, because I feel like you learn from the hard stuff.
Yeah.
I would just be like, I wouldn't even tell myself that I was going to work out, because I love that she struggled. I wish she struggled more. I wish it was harder, because I would have fucked the shit up even more. No, I think that's the best part. You got to struggle. I think I think to your question though, of like that person that's struggling, I would have been like, great. You actually have a reason to be successful. Like, I would be like, great, dig deeper. Let's just get over it and move on. Like, whatever it is, let's move on. People love the underdog story. They want you to succeed. Like, society wants you to succeed. You just got to do like 40% work when no one is looking. And then as soon as they see that you're successful, everyone wants whatever the story is. You lost your parents, you're poor, whatever. Like, you'd cancer when you were a kid. I don't care. People love that. They love it. And that's the thing that I love about the world, is that when I'm real and I show up and I speak like this, people are like, we want more of it. They don't want me to hide it.
Camille, thank you so much. This was amazing. I'm so appreciative of your time.
I'm so glad that we ended up getting to do this.